Hi, it's time for Science Notes. Today we're going to talk about ionic bonding. Let's get started. So let's start with a review. You've learned that you can tell how many valence electrons there are in an element by knowing what group that element is in. So, remembering that for our purposes, we won't be looking at the elements here and here, you can go through and determine how many electrons there are in each valence shell. So, group 1, there's 1. Group 2, there are 2. Group 13, there are 3. Group 14, 4. Group 15, 5. Group 16, 6. Group 17, 7. Group 18, 8. We also learned that each period on the table tells you how many shells or energy levels that particular element has. The periods are the rows across the periodic table. So, for instance, hydrogen and helium in period 1 just have one shell. Period 2 elements have 2 shells. Period 3 elements have 3 shells, and so on. So let's answer our first question. How do ions form? Let's look at sodium and chlorine again. Sodium in group 1 has 1 electron in its outer shell. Chlorine, found in group 17, has 7 electrons in its outer shell. They are both neutral atoms. An ion is an atom or atoms that has an electric charge. So, to become stable electrons or stable atoms, our two atoms want to take away or gain more electrons. So, let's look at sodium again and chlorine again. Sodium has the 1 electron. Chlorine has its 7. What chlorine wants to do is gain 1 electron in order to become a stable atom. What sodium wants to do is to give away an electron in order to become a stable atom. So, sodium will give away one of its electrons to chlorine, creating a stable compound. When a neutral atom loses a valence electron, it loses a negative charge. It becomes a positive ion. When a neutral atom gains an electron, it gains a negative charge. It becomes a negative ion. Sodium, a positive ion, and chlorine, a negative ion, are considered common ions. There are also something called polyatomic ions. Poly means many. So, polyatomic means many atoms. Polyatomic ions are ions with more than one or many atoms. Ammonium is an example of this. NH4. And it's a positive ion. So, we have our two ions, the positively charged sodium and the negatively charged chlorine. They want to create an ionic bond. An ionic bond is the attraction between two oppositely charged ions. When these two ions attract to each other, they create something called an ionic compound. An ionic compound is made up of positively charged and negatively charged ions. In an ionic compound, the total positive charge of all the positive ions is equal to the total negative charge of all the negative ions, which means, in this case, the sodium and the chlorine, one each, results in the compound NaCl, also known as table salt.